Well, I always loved what Jerry Garcia said just before the Grateful Dead played that song the last night at Fillmore West. He said, "All right, folks, here's the one it's all about." Johnny B. Good, the rock and roll origin myth, if you will. And man, has there ever been a Johnny B. Good out of Dark Star? We'll have to like go to the books to look that one
Oh,
up.
I think probably there has. Seems like there has been, but it doesn't matter what happened in history. What happened tonight was history. I have to confess I had to go feed the cats and missed the beginning of Darkstar, but because we're watching this on Nugsnet, I have 48 hours to rewind it and watch the whole damn first set again
That's right.
and miss all the little subtle interactions at on stage and close-ups of Jeff Kimmenty's hands and all of the other things that make nugs.net video coverage so damn wonderful.
Indeed, man. And I was actually I was not intently watching everything, but I was listening to everything as I moved about. So I heard every note, and you know, here we go again saying, "Man, what a set!" Because man, what a set.
Yep, I put little check marks next to the songs that I think would be good to pull out and play on the radio, and it's sort of all check marks after a while. It's like it's just top quality music coming off of this stage here. By the way, we're talking about Dead and Company at the Hollywood Casino Amphitheatre in Maryland Heights, Missouri.
It's got a
But
lot of
my
different
friends,
place names in there:
well, at
Hollywood,
least
Maryland,
yeah,
Missouri,
I think my friends have just basically acknowledged that they're playing St. Louis tonight.
and that's why Bobby threw in a local reference there in Black Throated Wind.
That's right. So it sounded pretty damn good. Let's run down the set list here before we take care of the rest of our business. Good Times was the opener. Big River, 2 check marks, thank you. Friend of the Devil, They Love Each Other. Black Throated Wind into Big Railroad Blues, and Dark Star into Johnny Be Good. Another lovely set.
And note that we've gotten both arrangements of Friend of the Devil in the last week or so. They played the slower version the last time they played it, and this was the more closer to the up tempo original. So they're even messing around with the arrangements within the context of individual songs, and that's really nice.
That's very good. And that points to another discussion about nugs.net, which is one of the reasons that we're here. It's Nugs that is feeding this to you either as part of the stream you already bought or as part of the free preview for set 2 of tonight's Dead and Company show. And the reason they're giving you the free preview is to show you how amazingly great it sounds and how great it looks to do these video live streams of the Dead and Company shows and tons of other shows that Nugsnet live streams as well. Not just Dead and Dead related stuff. They live stream lots and lots of music in video form. And as I noted earlier, when you buy one of those, you get 48 hours to watch it as many times as you want. But that other thing about the audio is you could get audio downloads of the stuff, keep them in your computer, and also download like the whole tour and listen to the different versions of Friend of the Devil and see how it evolved or went back and forth between the styles over time.
That's right. Over the course of the tour, you can be listening to this in a couple of days. Usually like a day or two. They get it tweaked. They make it available for download in a variety of formats, from way up very high res down to MP3s, depending on what your needs are. And you can be listening to this in a day or two through your awesome stereo system, or in your car, or on one of these things. You know, the music becomes yours and becomes available to you wherever you are forever.
And I've been downloading these Dead and Company shows as the tour goes on and pulling bits to play on my radio show. And I'm really glad that I've been doing it as the tour goes. I'll go through each time I get a download of a show, I'll pull out the pieces that I think are worthy of broadcast. And I have way more pieces selected than I have time to broadcast. But I'm glad I do it as we go because they keep playing interesting new stuff. And I just, I would have I, I, new ideas and fun things would have replaced last week's material. So I'm glad I made my selections when it was fresh. because there are constantly new cool things being done here for me to pull for future radio shows.
Right. And we should also say Nugs.net does not stop with Dead and Company. They
That's
have
very true.
this immense library of stuff. They do a lot of live streams that you can purchase to watch in real time. They also make available shows by artists just after they've happened, as they did with Dead and Company. They are currently doing Bruce Springsteen's entire tour of the world. I think he's somewhere in Europe right now. Um, and you can get those shows. You can also go way back into Bruce Springsteen's archives and get some of those phenomenal shows from, say, the Darkness on the Edge of Town tour,
Oh,
or
yes.
the River tour, or any number of epic Bruce Springsteen tours. You can get Wilco, you can get Fish, you can get Trey Anastasio's band, you can get Goose. A lot of the new generation jam bands are signed up with Nugs, as well as a lot of great, what you'd call classic rock artists. An amazing catalog of stuff, and it's always growing. And you can always avail yourself of it as a subscriber or as someone who buys things a la carte. It's a fantastic service. And we ain't saying that just because they pay us to. We pay for it, or we listen to it because we love live music. And it's, in fact, I think we're doing this job mostly for the downloads. You know, we might do it for free, but we're very happy that we get a little compensation for it. But really, the pleasure is hearing this music, getting to watch these shows every night, and bring you cool interviews with cool guests, which is coming up in a minute.
And who do we have tonight? Remind me.
Oh, tonight we have Adam Theis, who is
Oh, that's right.
a fantastic interpreter of Grateful Dead music in new ways on two fronts, as a member of Bobby Weir's Wolf Pack, who back up the Wolf Bros, and also as the leader of his own amazing twist on Grateful Dead music, Grateful Brass, which is a New Orleans style brass band, playing this stuff in ways you never would have imagined before. So I think without further ado, we can go to that. We'll tell you that we will next be coming to you from Wrigley Field in Chicago. And looking forward to that, one of the great venues in America. But after we finish the interview with Adam, we're going to toss it right back to the stage so the band can get back to business. So thanks a lot,
Is it true that
everybody.
you're going to Chicago and going to do it in person from out there? Is that true?
That is absolutely correct.
Was that a surprise? I'm sorry, did I just spoil the?
No, I don't.
Okay, good.
It's not an undisclosed location, but it'll be, you know, where I'll turn up in the venue might be a surprise, depending on the technical gods, if they smile on me. We've been experimenting a little bit with this form of the roving reporter. There were a few bugs in the system last time, but we're getting them ironed out.
I'm glad you're doing that, and you're out there having fun doing it. I am thoroughly enjoying doing this tour from home. So everybody wins is my motto. So you have a great time out there, and everybody at home enjoy. If you're watching this on YouTube for the free preview, do check out the first set preview, and then consider buying the thing or subscribing to the season or becoming a streaming customer of Nugsnet. And with that, let's go to Adam Theis, please.
Yeah. Well, we are hearing more and more all the time incredible new and different ways to interpret Grateful Dead music. And we are with a co-conspirator in two outfits that are doing that. One is Bob Weir and Wolf Bros and the extended ensemble known as the Wolf Pack. And the other is a fantastic New Orleans flavored ensemble called Grateful Brass. And with us from both of those groups is our friend Adam Theis. Adam, welcome.
Hello, how's it going?
Good to have you.
He brought along a prop. How nice. Yes, in case you hadn't guessed, Adam is a cellist. No, I'm kidding. That was a trombone. And Adam is a fantastic trombonist. He plays a lot of different instruments, a lot of different horns. But he is the trombonist in that great section in the Wolfpack, and also a co-founder, I believe, and one of the conceptualists behind Grateful Brass, which takes Grateful Dead music and puts it in the context of New Orleans brass band music, and it just fits so well. It works so well in that context.
I love the EP, and I loved hearing you guys do it live at the Skull and Roses Festival in Ventura a few weeks ago.
Right on. Yeah, it's such a pleasure to be accepted by that community, to be invited to that festival. It was super fun playing, and the bonus was getting to meet all these great musicians. And I mean, so many of them I'd met before, but the guys in my band had not, and it was a whole new world for them. It was really cool, like watching Phil and friends with my band, and they were just their eyes were wide open. It was really cool.
Were you into Grateful Dead music before you joined this troupe?
So before I started playing with Bobby in late 2020, I had worked with Mickey Hart exactly 10 years ago, like this last tour actually that I did with Bobby. These things started popping up on my social media like 10 years ago, and it was so weird. Wow, it was exactly 10 years ago. So, but when I played with Mickey, that was my first exposure to like learning any Grateful Dead songs. Where I grew up in West Sonoma County, I was the Grateful Dead was pretty ubiquitous, but it wasn't something that I had run into. I'd run into a lot of music, and played a lot of music, country, like all sorts of avant-garde stuff, as well as what I was learning in college. But when the Grateful Dead thing came along, Mickey was wanting to hire players who didn't grow up listening to the Dead, which is
Yes.
kind of a common thread. Bobby has done that as well to a fair extent, and um, but I still had to learn 40 songs for the tour, and so anyways, I think that was my first exposure, and that was where I first came up with the name Grateful Brass. I just thought, oh, that's kind of cool, and maybe I could do something with horns and the Dead because it's so unusual to hear like a horn section with Grateful Dead music, and it took me about 10 years and a pandemic to actually act on the idea.
So I take it you liked the music when you were exposed to it?
Yeah, I think having to do the crash course when I played with Mickey didn't really give me the chance. And I think a lot of like mercenary musicians can relate to this. When you have to learn that many songs that fast, I think I had like 2 weeks. Um, you don't really get to enjoy the music on that a listening level. You're just kind of like every time I'd be listening, it's just breaking it down. What is the forms? What is it then? So it when I started going back to it a few years after that, like or some of the songs would get stuck in my head. I'm like, oh wow, I'm still singing that song from 2 years ago. Like that's a good sign. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I kind of had this playlist of songs that I thought would be cool to rework, and I would revisit those sometimes. I watched the Dead documentary. Um, that was another like wow. I started putting the historical context together because I'm really into Bay Area music history, and I think that's really what made the context change for me. And then when Bobby called, I had the other development that had happened is I've known Jay Lane and Kenny Brooks, who played sax and Rat Dog forever. I've known them since the '90s, and I've always looked up to those guys. They were big jazz, kind of urban jazz dudes in the Bay Area when I was first growing up, coming to San Francisco. And when they started playing with Bobby, I would ask them about it because I was so kind of fascinated with how it worked. It's like well, you're like jazz guys and you're playing these shows for like Deadheads. How's it working? What is it like? And what's Bobby like? And they just had nothing but great things to say especially about Bob. And so when I got the call, it was a for sure, I got to check this out. Even though I was crazy busy because it was before the pandemic hit. When they called, it was still 2019. And, and I'm just so glad that I didn't say no. I kind of went against my better judgment of like, not, I try to not overextend myself now, like in my more wise years. But sometimes you got to break those rules. And I'm glad I did.
Yeah, well, I was really glad to hear you say that Bobby and Mickey seek out people who were not that well schooled in Grateful Dead music because they don't want to play with people who sound like they used to. You know, like a lot of people who play Grateful Dead music are basing it on the template of who those guys were, in the '70s and '80s and '90s, and those guys I think kind of crave having their own conception of their music subverted a little bit, so it'll push them. I've seen that with Wolf Bros a lot, and because Don Was doesn't play bass like Phil. In fact, Phil sort of ordered Don Was not to play like him. He said, play like yourself, man, and all those guys come from a different perspective, a different outlook, and so they nudge Bobby to be his current self and his forward looking self, and I love the way that works. And of course, you've got a completely clean slate with Grateful Brass because no one has tried that before. But it kind of naturally works because Grateful Dead music was always filled with, it wasn't like standard play the chords, someone will solo over the chords. There's like a lot of converging and diverging melodies in New Orleans music, and a lot of counterpoint, obviously. And you're in a band with nobody playing chords, like the harmonies are formed by all these parallel and clashing melodies, and
Yeah.
it really works, man.
So how does it work in the Wolf Bros Wolf Pack? Gary has explained that it's a combination of structure and improvisation, and it presents it as a pretty ambitious merging of the two, that you have a lot of freedom to deviate from the charts as you go.
Yeah, it's tricky having a five-piece ensemble work that way, as the Wolfpack is. It could be five singers, like maybe section, background singers, whatever, too, like whatever the string section. It's really hard to have a lot of interpretive things happening or improvisational things. And for us, we started out approaching it that way without any written arrangements, like let's just feel it. There were some cool moments, but considering we were doing live stream performances for tens of thousands of people, we didn't feel like it was putting our best foot forward. Like if we were doing recording sessions and we could go like how they made Bitches Brew, Miles Davis Bitches Brew, they would jam forever and they would like kind of take certain parts. If we could have done that, I would have been a lot happier with it. I think we all would have been happier, but it was like, we got to trim the fat. We got to like get to the song more and get to the real melodies that need to be played. And so after a few live streams, we asked Bob, we said, hey, we're all arrangers in our own projects and stuff. And we have this plan that we know there's a lot of songs, but we think we could split them up and each take on arranging certain songs just for the Wolfpack. The band, Wolf Bros still just play the way they play, but our things can sit on top of that structure and still leave it room for, improvisation, Bob deciding to do different things or whatever. So we write in a lot of cues in our charts where, I don't know why, but Desolation Row just came to mind because it's like 10 verses, right? And, like Bob might put a guitar solo after the third verse and not the fourth verse different times. So we need to know, like, we're not going to memorize the lyrics to Desolation Row. I mean, it's great that Bobby can do it, but so we need to be able to go, oh, okay, he's here. And so, or sometimes he might just do a shorter version of a song. And so we got to know where things are happening. So we figured out little ways that we could be flexible. And sometimes we got to play the charts in different keys or whatever if the band's in a different key, and that's kind of fun too. But it's a mix of really, really highly scripted stuff, and at the same time, it's not like just improv or just sheet music or whatever you want to call it. It's the weird world in between that most of us in the Wolfpack would all agree that it's a part of our brain we haven't used very much in all the crazy stuff we've done. Because when you're reading music, like when you're playing jazz, if you're reading a chart, it's like you're reading notes, you're reading the melody part, and then when you solo, you're just kind of like not really reading. I mean, you're following the chord structure. But in this, it's like you're reading the chart, but while you're reading, you're watching Bob with one eye, kind of like a conductor. But conductors don't like change the key of songs. They don't change the rhythm of the song. Like they're just kind of trying to keep everyone together for the most part, and like subtly change the dynamics maybe in the tempo. Well, they change tempos. That's not correct. conductors do that, but Bob might change the groove. And so you're kind of doing these two things that are at odds with each other, which is reading. You try to read really, if you're a good reader, you read what's on the page no matter what, even if it feels like it's not, doesn't feel right to come in with this weird note out of nowhere, but that's what makes, a good reader a good reader. So it's a strange thing sometimes, and it's fun. I've really gotten into it, and it's like influenced what I do in some of my other bands, especially Grateful Brass. It's like I almost want there to be those big moments where like half the band goes to a key change and half the band doesn't, because it's like, whoa, check that chord out. I would have never thought of those notes together,
Yeah.
Well, this is a form of music in which the audience is conditioned to expect novelty rather than predictability. So you're sort of in the right place for it. And I have a feeling that part of Bob's goal was to bring you into that state of mind so you could take it out into the world. This Grateful Dead way of making music is different, profoundly rewarding in my experience. And so here you are taking it out into the world. It's great.
Yeah, it's fun. It's definitely fun, and a little bit less terrifying than I think it was at first. When we started to realize, wait, you mean we might just like, he never said it's cool to make mistakes, or mistakes are fun, or mistakes is what the audience likes, but like in a certain roundabout way, we were led to that realization of mistakes are gonna happen, and kind of embrace them. And so when you're a musician that's like never really considered that, I mean, they say that in jazz, like there's no such thing as a mistake. But if you play it twice, it's not a mistake, or like a wrong note. But that's different. That's like if you're soloing and you're like, soloing, you hit a weird note and you're like, oh, I'm gonna hit the weird note again. That's cool. That's one thing. But this is different. This is like an ensemble, and you're all like maybe playing something that's totally just a big thing that's just clearly not what's supposed to be there, but it's leaning into it more as a band, and maybe the band goes there now, and when it happens, it can be some of the coolest stuff, and I know the audience is on that ride, and I think that's what we had to realize is, oh, they're not a bunch of snobby musicians with their arms folded watching to see if we can play this jazz standard the way it perfectly or something. They're on this whole different track, traveling to a totally different destination where they want things to surprise them, and yeah, like you said, they don't want to hear it that that same way it was last night. And so once the Wolfpack realized that, I could tell everyone kind of just their shoulders went down a little bit, and like, all right, I can get with this.
Yeah, and everybody contributes to the creation of the content, and that in any given jam intensive song, like the vamp out of, say, Weather Report Suite or out of Let It Grow can go on for 16 bars, or it can go on for 48 bars or whatever. So you have the option of laying out for a bit, or like one guy can assert a counterpoint line, and you guys being jazz school players, the other guy can say, oh, I hear that, and like then harmonizing that line, like new things emerge, because I've seen the band multiple nights, and I say, oh, yeah, I don't, that wasn't in the horn chart the night before, and it's you guys are writing on the fly, but are conscious enough to know what to leave out, and to know when to assert, and when to respond, and when to lay back. And it really works with this band.
Yeah, it's got to be in the spirit of the song, and in the spirit of the song, in the sense that it's got to be in the spirit of the song at that moment. And that's because most of the songs aren't played the same way. I mean, like, I know when we do Touch of Grey, I don't think that song has ever taken on much different things. It's kind of like an encore, and we just hit it and quit it. But almost every other song has been fair game, and some way more than others. But yeah, maybe the band will be playing go into a groove on an outro, and maybe Jay's playing a different drum groove. Maybe the harmony is different. Maybe it's like more of a jazzier version of a major chord, and it's like, oh. And I'll just be, especially if I'm the arranger on that song, a lot of times I might be like, hey guys, like I'll give the cue, like, no, or I'll be like, listen, we're not reading the page, listen, and I'll come up with something that's a little bit different that fits what they're doing. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think even when it doesn't, it's in the spirit of, hey, we're all in this together, and we're all going for this place that where the music is calling us to go. And it's just, it didn't feel right to me to try to play what was, on the page for that. And so no one's ever, Bobby, nobody's ever been like, oh, like, why didn't you guys play the thing you usually play? They really appreciate that we tried at least. And when it works, it's super cool.
Well, we spoke with Don Was yesterday on our radio show, and he mentioned that he's never heard Jay play the song the same way twice in a row, and that as a result, Don himself has never played the song the same way twice in a row. And that's one of the hallmarks of this music. It's momentary music. It's what we're doing right now.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah. And, we've on two different occasions or two different runs of shows, we've even seen some of that process take place in the context of a symphony orchestra in DC and in Atlanta. And it's amazing how effective that has been, and also how I think it's been a revelatory experience for the orchestra players. Like certain section players in the orchestra getting to cut loose and blow for a while, and the way the charts and the free sections converge. That's a tribute to everyone who was involved in those events. I mean, everyone was really listening intently, and the synchronicity between the band and the conductor and the orchestra was remarkable. I was there the last night in DC, and it was stunning. It really was.
Yeah, I remember when the project was first starting to come to fruition. I mean, obviously, I wasn't around for a lot of the beginnings of it, but when it was really starting to form, I remember Bobby saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to have the orchestra soloing, and da 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 da." There's solos in orchestras, but they're not. I don't know. I was like skeptical, I gotta say, because the way that he was explaining it, it was different. It was going to be like them standing up and being featured in a way that was almost like they're in the band in the Wolf Brothers and Wolfpack. It totally worked. I mean, people went nuts because of the way that it was presented and orchestrated, and they were featured. And so, yeah, once again, and the orchestra thought it was crazy too. Like I remember when we first sat down, they were like, "I have this." Hey, they come up to the Wolfpack, Hey, it says solo right here. You're gonna take that, right? Trombone. You're taking it, right? And we're like, no, you take it, run with it. We have other solos. You guys get those. I mean, we'll take it if you really don't want it. But as soon as they played it in rehearsal, they're like, oh, okay, I could see it. And then when they played it at the show and they got like standing ovations and stuff, then it was on. They're like, oh, okay, I can get with this.
Adam, I hate to interrupt you, but we've run out of time. We have to hand this back to the live stream for nugs.net so the Dead and Company can do their second set. Where can people find out more about Grateful Brass and more about what the other things you're doing in your musical life?
For sure. Jazzmafia.com is our collective that I've run for 23 years. And that's where you can find everything related to my musical life, including Grateful Brass and all sorts of other wild things.
Jazzmafia.com. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I recommend checking out. I've known of Adam's work. We only just recently met, but he's intersected with. He mentions Kenny Brooks and Jay, and a lot of people from my old Bay Area jazz family have overlapped with Adam for a long time, and everything he does is worth checking out. And if you want to hear Grateful Dead music transformed in a beautiful way, especially check out Grateful Brass.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks y'all.